a basic understanding of web accessibility and how to incorporate it into your WordPress projects, the themes, plugins, and content as well. So I get a lot of common questions about accessibility just in general. So I'm going to answer those first to kind of give you an idea a little bit more about accessibility and set it up for the WordPress environment. So question one is, what is web accessibility? Well, really, it's the art of building a website that is usable by people with any number of disabilities. The techniques in the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are meant to aid in this quest by providing guidelines that remove barriers to web content and functionality. So who benefits from accessibility? Pretty much everybody does. Everybody does to some degree because it just makes for a better user experience all around. You know, accessibility helps people with temporary impairments, like a broken arm, to people with just environmental or technical constraints, like maybe not having access to speakers for their audio. But some people are born with lifelong disabilities, and others acquire illness or disease later in life that causes them. So pretty much everyone succumbs to the trials of aging as well, which typically affects hearing, vision, memory, and motor loss. So why do we focus on accessibility? Really, the number one reason to care about accessibility is it makes your site more inclusive, and it's the right thing to do. Another important benefit is legal protection. So the United States has accessibility laws governing sites funded by the federal government, which affects federal sites, education sites, and healthcare sites. But many other countries have well-established accessibility governance as well, in a much broader scope. For websites that have international reach, the laws of other countries are very well worth considering. For each of these laws, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG as we shorten them to, is used as the base for testing. And I even strive to meet WCAG AAA guidelines whenever I can. There's also a big cost savings. Even if your website doesn't meet every single aspect of the laws, being able to show your intent to comply has an enormous benefit in reaching a fair settlement. So laws won't ever change to allow for less accessibility, so getting ahead of the game really only helps you in the long run. Having an inaccessible site will actually increase your costs and decrease your earnings potential. Even if you're able to save a little bit of money during the initial development, it doesn't offset the other potential losses, and also having a smaller market with an inaccessible site than if you decide to just implement it from the beginning. And like I said, there's a big marketing potential. You're going to be able to reach a large population that you can't reach in any other way. Another idea, if you're really trying to market to that genre of people, is to look at this disabilityimages.com website and use that for some of your stock photos. They have a lot of really great images, and I can bring that up real quick to show you.
We got a broken line.
What's that?
We got a blur messages and a broken line.
No, I don't know. So here's that disability images site, and it works just like any other stock photo site. You pay for the image, and you can enter in search terms, and they just are very realistic lifestyle images. So anyway, you can search for any number of disabilities and get something that looks like natural and friendly, and something that would be really inclusive to use. Because people like to see, themselves in ads and things and be able to relate. So it's really nice. And if you were to look at iStock Photo for the same type of images, you get a lot more cheesier graphics. I feel like really cheesy photos of people like, just doing that, or, and this one is just a lot more realistic. Also, when you implement standard best practices for accessibility, you're going to gain a lot of SEO benefits. The same things that help your site sound better with the screen readers also improve SEO, like clear title elements, are going to make you have better click rates from search engines. Proper heading elements are going to mean that the search engines can scan and better understand the topics on your website. And links that use meaningful text instead of click here means that link passes more meaning into the target page, and it's also going to increase those pages' SEO. Accessibility isn't expensive if it's done as part of your initial development. The cost of going through your entire site to identify and fix past problems can be more costly and time-consuming, however. There's a lot of free tools that can help that we're going to talk about in a minute. Does anyone else have any kind of just general questions about accessibility before we get going? I know we're all coming from different backgrounds and have different levels of experience with it. Okay. So I want to show you some really common barriers and how they relate back to WordPress. I always like to start things off with a joke. Great guys. Let's hear one from the censor. Okay, so even without sound, it has the captions on there, which is another great accessibility feature. If you don't have sound, that's a great fallback. So you can kind of hear them talking in their voice, even though you were just reading it, right? Because you've heard The Simpsons so many times. So you know, if even The Simpsons are making a joke about it, this is a really common occurrence. The elderly always increase the text size in their browsers because your vision just declines with age. So there's a few different vision simulators you can try that I'll show you next. Let's see. Actually, I'm going to switch over to a different browser. So here's the two vision simulators I'm going to show you. And these are both in Chrome. Chrome Lens and No Coffee. So in Chrome here, I can try this No Coffee vision simulator to kind of get a better understanding of how different people are seeing the world. There's different color blindness deficiencies in here. So we can try one of these out, and you can see that it automatically changes the color. There's also things like different amounts of blur that people might be seeing. So here's normal vision with a little bit of blur.
Yeah, I actually take my glasses.
There's contrast loss. Some people just kind of lose contrast a little bit more. And this is also kind of a good indicator of how your mobile device might look out in the sun, or if you have this screen on really dim. Kind of look over your design, see if everything still has enough contrast to be able to read it like that. Cataracts have different cloudiness. So this kind of simulates that. Some people have flutter, where everything actually looks like it's moving a little bit.
Can you click on macular degeneration? My dad has that.
Yeah.
It's the second one
This
down. Yeah.
So that is where they have vision loss, like in a portion of their field of view, and it can grow with time. So like here it might be it just started, but if it's really progressing, it can start to get larger and larger and larger until it finally really fills your field of view. Some people just have like floaters, but flutter is still on. So these are just different ways you can kind of try to play around with it. Some people also have this where it's starting to come on in from the side, and they have less and less vision. Okay. So let's go to normal. And then I'll show.
So is there,
Go ahead.
is there a plugin that, let's say somebody has one of these disabilities, that it can automatically adjust things on the fly?
Say that again.
Is there like a plugin that, or something that you could add on, a browser add-on that would make adjustments?
Make adjustments like to your theme or your code, or like.
Right.
Yes, actually there is, and we're going to talk about it toward the end. So.
Okay.
Good looking at. Okay, so when you install Chrome Lens, that will actually be installed. Yeah, I still have that. The Flutter, yeah. If you install Chrome Lens, it's going to appear down here in your web developer toolbar when you open up your inspect element. So if you click on Chrome Lens from there, again, it's similar. It has full blindness, which is good if you're testing things out with a screen reader, but it also has, it'll just make things a little blurry, more blurry, or it has a little bit of color blindness options as well.
I think when I was studying branding and fonts, there you can Google particular fonts that maybe the elderly and different venues of people would prefer too, which could help. I don't remember the exact context, but that was something that came up with like what font, what color,
Yeah, definitely.
those sort of things.
Fonts
How
are
big
important.
you should do the print anyway, the spacing. So to add to that.
Right. Yeah, having fonts that have the letters look more different from one another is easier for people to distinguish that have like reading disabilities and the like. So like sometimes you'll have an A. That's kind of why they have this little hat on the A, to just make it look that much different from like an O, for instance. If it was just round with one straight side, it would look really similar. And when you're just scanning the page, they just kind of blend together. It's harder to distinguish them. So yeah, fonts can be very important. So some of the other things people do is they will increase the font size, like we saw in the cartoon there. So I'm going to go back to Firefox, because in Firefox there's actually an option under View and then Zoom, where you can zoom the text only. And a lot of people actually will use this feature over zooming in the entire page. So it only increases the text size. So as you can see, everything should, all your containers should expand to fill the space of the font. So avoid things like fixed heights on your containing elements.
What's a fixed height?
So in your CSS, you can set like a height and a width on an element. So if you just have height, just use max height instead of height for things. We're going to take a look at some other themes and see how they fare. Increasing the text. So you can see here there's a fixed height going on with this sticky top piece. And when you increase the text size, the text gets cut off and you can't read it anymore at this size. So right now, with the WCAG guidelines, it's recommended to test up to 200%. There might be some new guidelines coming out by next year that would increase that to 400%.
Oh my.
There's other types of magnification that people use too, but this is just the easiest for you to test out because it doesn't require you to buy any extra software. It's right in the browser. So when you're deciding on different themes and things like that, you can just use this quick little test to see how accessible it is with the font size increase. Another thing that happens is people might use high contrast. So let me open up one. see is Alt-Shift-Print Screen, and it'll actually change the theme of your whole computer. And in Internet Explorer, then you can see how a web page would look that way. And when you look at the screen in high contrast mode, you want to look out for things like text that doesn't show up or that might disappear. A lot of times that'll happen if someone has a background image color somewhere and text in front of it. If they have a background image but they don't also have a background color, because the high contrast mode actually removes background images. So say for instance you had a dark image with white text over it. Then when you switch to high contrast mode, if the white text is the same color as the background, which is also white, you wouldn't be able to see it in its context. So I guess this theme is looks pretty good. So I don't know if I can find another one real quick that would have an image. I think, nowadays people don't use background images like that as much. It's usually just a color because everybody's going more toward faster loading web pages and the like. So images are going to slow down your page load anyway, so you try to want to use just solid colors in your backgrounds and things like that. Yep, keep it simple. So then to turn off high contrast mode, it's Alt-Shift, print screen again.
So just repeat the process.
Repeat what?
Alt-Shift, print screen.
Oh, right. Another thing to consider for people with low vision is they're going to be seeing a smaller viewing area, right? Just like with that macular degeneration. There was just a big open area in the field of view that they couldn't see. So something that you can also try when you're looking at your designs is to make a fist with your hand, very, very small, and hold it up to your face and try to look at the layout. And if you do that now, I encourage you to try it and try to read what's in the banner images. It's hard to read because they're moving constantly, right? So that's actually one of the guidelines as well, is we're not supposed to have any moving content on your page. They can't be stopped. If it moves continuously and there's no way to stop it or pause it, that's going to hinder some people with low vision from being able to read your content. We also looked at color blindness a little bit in those simulators. And here's an example of a really popular WordPress plugin that does have some color blindness issues. This is the Yoast SEO plugin, which is, I love it, but this one little section of it in the admin is really hard to understand what's going on for people with really common color blindness. Like 1 in 12 males and 1 in 200 females have this form of color blindness. So you can see that on the left, if you have full color vision, it's really easy to tell under that readability column if something has a problem or if it's good. By red signifying that there's an issue and green meaning it's okay. But the colorblind people are going to be seeing both of those look identical. Now they do have a fallback. If you happen to be able to use your mouse, you can mouse over that area, but it's also very, very tiny. That's a very small circle, so you have to also have very good motor control. So you're assuming that these people can do all of these things. And even then, it's not really a very equal experience because you can't see at a glance which ones are passing and which ones are not. You can only see one at a time if you mouse over that item. So something that they could have done to fix that is have a different shape. So you don't really ever want to rely on color alone to convey a message or try to get a response out of people. Always have a different color and try to throw a different shape in there too. So like this would be an example of a photo slider where, you know, like you have all those little navigation dots and usually one's a different color to signify this is the active slide. But try to make those a different shape too. This also comes in handy with things like graphs and charts. Try not to rely on color alone. Throw a texture or some text or something like that in there. And also you'll want to make sure you underline your links. It might be hard for some people to spot which word in that paragraph has the link on it. But with the underline, it's very easy for everyone to tell. I've actually created a tool that you can use to test colors on your own. Here you can put in the text value of the text color, the text value of the link color, and the background color. And it'll tell you if it passes or not against the color contrast formula. And then you could possibly have a link with enough contrast from the text that's next to it that you wouldn't need an underline. But it's kind of hard to make that color combination because it has to both pass the background, it has to pass against the other text color, both colors have to pass. So it's kind of hard to find a good medium in there, but there is a blue shade that works.
I can't remember, did you say, I know it'll remove the image, but that one thing you were talking about, it doesn't remove the background. So if I pick this solid background, which I have, that would stay there. Or will that remove and then all of a sudden some of my light text will be lost? Is that what you said?
Yeah, no, because it changes all the backgrounds to like dark, because it's kind of like a dark on light text. It'll change all the text to light and the backgrounds to dark. But yeah, I wish I had a better example of an image background so you could see. You should be good. You should be good with just solid colors. It's when you have a background image that you don't also have a background color that's dark enough to pass.
Okay. Thank you.
Another thing that we wanted to do for testing, so that's really all the things I have with low vision. There's one other quick thing you can do to test out a theme to see how accessible it is, and that is use your keyboard only. So let's take a look at this site. So on this site here, say you wanted to use this for your theme, I would start to press the tab key when you're in your address bar, and you can see how it jumps over to the search bar. On your Macintosh, you're going to have to actually turn on a setting in the accessibility settings that will allow you to tab through all of these elements. By default, it's not turned on for some reason. On Windows machines, you can straight out of the box start tabbing, and you can land on every single element on the page that you can interact with. So that's things like buttons, inputs, links. So I just tabbed a couple of times already. I'm tabbing again. Now, down in the bottom left-hand corner, I can see that I'm on the Twitter link. So I'm assuming I'm probably up there on that Twitter icon. So yeah, now it's Instagram. But now I think I might be on the logo, but I can't see anything changing. Okay, the only thing that changed there was that search got a little bit larger. That's pretty subtle too. Now we're on About Us, Services. Nothing is happening on the page, so I really can't get a feel for where I'm at. If I was using the mouse, it'd be really easy to tell. I'm hovering, and even with the mouse, you can see that the colors get lighter at least. The color changes a little bit there. But nothing happens when I'm using the keyboard. So that's a red flag to look out for. see how this one looks. Now this one is really nice. I hit tab and the very first link is a skip to content link. And that's helpful for keyboard users because if they're tabbing through this linear document, it's going to take them longer to jump down to where the content is. So if they're traveling around to a lot of different pages of your site, a sighted person is going to just skip over your top navigation after a while because they've seen it before and it hasn't changed. So that's kind of what the skip to content link does for keyboard users. They don't have to tab through all that navigation every time. So I can tab again, and now you can see that there's an outline on that first link. There's an outline on all of these links. Twitter, all these, that changes. So as long as you can see something like that, it's going to be really helpful for keyboard-only users. And that could be people with that can't use a mouse because maybe they have arthritis or some other ailment, some motor skill disability, something like that. It's just easier for some people to type, but they're still visual, so they need to see where they're at.
Or also people with screen readers are essentially, they're navigating just like you would keyboard only. That's how the screen reader navigates.
Do you mean like an iPad?
It's like if you turn on the voice in your iPad, so you have your iPad, reading the web page to you. And you're,
I didn't know you could do that. Something new.
So one thing that is pretty cool that I found lately is the what input. It's if you're pretty savvy with good web development, you can throw this in and style your own focus states. I know I have way too many tabs open. Here it is. So this is a really cool tool that will allow you to style things differently based on if they're getting focused with your mouse, or focused with the keyboard, or focused with a touch device like those iPads checked out. So when I start to tab through these elements, see how it changes the keyboard? It can tell I'm using my keyboard now. So it has a really bright, obvious focus color. But if I was using my mouse, maybe I wouldn't want that obvious of a color. Because you can see where you're at with the mouse a little bit easier. So it's styled this way, or it can be styled this way. Really helpful. And I put this on one of my WordPress sites on this one here, so I'll show you that an example. So we got the skip to content link. We have a bright red box around everything that gets focused. So you can totally tell where you're at on this page. WordPress provides some accessibility features straight out of the box. You're using their default template, their default theme. So one of them is the navigation menu. It's just pretty much an unordered list of links. And in addition, there are several other navigation blocks where WordPress adds in some HTML that specifically kind of maps out different landmark roles on the page. So it'll let you know if it's navigation, it'll let you know if it's the page content area, and so on. They also have a number of forms that are pretty accessible, like the search form by default is, the comment form is pretty accessible as well. But in the end, really every single bit of code that WordPress outputs automatically can be replaced by whatever theme you choose or whatever plugins you choose. So you're going to have to test your theme and plugins to make sure that they didn't change the already accessible functionality that WordPress provides. So let's take a little bit closer look at the forms. There's some things that we need to check for. Color contrast of placeholder text is an important one that often gets overlooked. All inputs need to have a visible associated label. And no tab indexes should be set on any of the inputs. Something that will help you with the color contrast to your placeholder is this little code snippet here that you can put in your CSS. This will allow you to change the color of those placeholders and also make sure you set the opacity to 1. Because by default, the placeholder text is very, very light. It doesn't pass contrast. You need to make sure you also have each CSS block separated like this. I know typically if I have the same CSS rules, I like to group them all together, but this actually doesn't work that way. You have to keep each one separated like that. There's a plugin that's really popular, maybe some of you have used it. It's Contact Form 7. By default, that form doesn't have any labels associated with the inputs. So there's actually a plugin that if you are going to use this Contact Form 7, will automatically throw in labels for you. So your form will be more accessible that way. Another pretty popular form plugin is Gravity Forms. But again, that one, it's a little bit better, but it does still have some accessibility issues as well. There's a plugin that will fix those though. It's the WCAG 2.0 form fields for Gravity Forms.
WCAG, what's the rest of it?
2.0
2.0.
form fields for Gravity Forms.
Okay.
And that'll fix a couple of those problems. With Gravity Forms, they actually put tab index on a lot of the form field elements. So that's, if a keyword user is starting to tab through, they're not going to hit any of your other links on your page first, or any other buttons, or any other content. It's going to make them jump right down to the form. But that's really kind of unexpected behavior.
But that is one of the really cool things about WordPress. So we got WordPress, and then we have this plugin for WordPress. And then somebody else made a plugin for your plugin to fix some of the problems.
Yeah.
Because it's so open, you can see the code, and it's all open. You can go in if you know what you're doing, or if you know what you want it to do, you can go in and make it do what you want. It's nice. Sorry.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let me throw on the screen reader. I hope you can take a listen to it.